Hello, hello. Here is Broadcast Team Alpha again. And here we are, live on Broadcast Team Alpha, YouTube, 3 TV stations, and a bunch of other places. And we are here for some real quantum thinking. And we're going to have some cutting edge conversations and quantum possibilities. And my name is Augie, and I'm one of the co-hosts here. And Nori is, she's in Florida, and they have thunderstorms down there, and the lights went out, and the lights came back, but she doesn't have cable. So here we are doing it by ourselves, and hopefully maybe she can join us. Either way, we have a phenomenal guest with us, and but first I like to tell you how you can connect with us. You'll find us at broadcastteamalpha.com, and there is Nori texting me. Let me check. Oh, okay, she's not gonna make it. And Broadcast Team Alpha, we're on YouTube with the same name, and we are also a bunch of other places where you can find us. And what we're finding out is that there is quite a few stations like us out there, but in many ways we show up as being special. And while you are on YouTube, please also subscribe, because that will help us a lot. As well as, if you like what you hear, go ahead also and support us on the super chat feature, because it tells us we're doing the right thing. And now let me tell you a little bit about the guest. I'm going to shorten this down, because otherwise I'll be reading for 20 minutes out of his bio, and we don't want that. We want to hear from him instead of me. So he's an adjunct professor of alternative sciences in New Jersey, and he has written several books. He is a sought-after speaker on radio and documentaries and TV, and he has also been on Coast to Coast, which is, one of the big ones. And he's an expert on human origin, ancient mythology, archaeology, and biology. And he has found that much of the ancient texts, they actually represent real human events as it actually happened in ancient history. And I want to ask, this is good. I want to ask him what he knows about the Anunnaki, because rumor on the street, as well as in the Sumerian tablets, says that they are the ones that created man, which our version now is called mankind. So this is going to be good. This is really going to be good. So welcome to the show, Leon Bibi.
Thank you so much, Augie. Thanks for having
me. Yeah, gosh, there is so much to talk about. Where do you want to start? In the beginning?
We could start in the beginning. Yeah. Just to give sort of a perspective, a timeline. From the beginning, from the origin up until Jesus, if you want to. I mean, that's
good.
Quite vast, but I put together a timeline in my first book, which is called Adam Equals Alien, and it's 4 pages, and it basically lists a timeline from the creation of the universe 14 billion years ago up until Jesus. Mm-hmm. And so some of the major points are obviously the Earth, origination of the Earth, 4.6 billion years. The moon, actually right before that, 5.3 billion years. Single-cell bacterial development, 3.9 billion years. Multi-cell bacterial development, a big jump, 400 million years ago. Then asteroid strikes killing the dinosaurs, 65 million years ago. Earliest ape fossils, 8 million years ago. The Lucy fossil was found 3.2 million years ago. And then it gets very interesting after that. You and I talked about the footprints that were found of humans 2 million years ago. Isn't that interesting? Because Lucy was found 3.2 million years ago. BC. And from my research, the Anunnaki first visited Earth 445,000 years ago.
Yeah.
So something happened, intervened, then all of a sudden, early apes started changing, and the first ET Homo sapien, genetically developed by intervention, happened approximately 300,000 years ago. So between 445,000 years ago and 300,000 years ago, the Anunnaki were here without making humans. Yep. I do believe in the Sitchin model that they were here to mine gold, the raw material that they needed to survive. I'm sure your listeners and yourself know the story of why they needed gold, but it worked. They used the gold. They survived, no longer getting irradiated from their binary sun system.
Or losing their atmosphere to space as they're traveling through it. Yeah.
Exactly. And got the gold. And so then from 300,000 BC, which was the first genetically developed intervention, from my research, Adam and Eve, okay, which really wasn't just one man and one woman. It was several men and several women, yep. The Adamu and etc., several, was about 200,000 years. So it took 100,000 years really to get it right, which it's pretty interesting. I don't know your thoughts on that, but it's just pretty interesting that they were so far ahead of us technologically and in intelligence, but it did take 100,000 years. Now, maybe that's human years and maybe not Anunnaki years, but 100,000 years to create a human that can see and hear and feel and touch and listen to commands and, follow through. So I find that interesting. What do you think?
Yeah, in the Sumerian tablet, it says that Enki, he kept screwing it up. And he ended up having all kinds of weird creatures, humanoids with 3 arms and 1 eye, and all kinds of weird stuff. That, going into the genetics, that's not easy. So they didn't get it right the first time either, but he was a compassionate God, so he took care of his creatures, is what it says in the tablet.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So,
yeah.
Our hero, really. Enki was our hero versus Enlil, right? Who didn't dislike humans. So then, interestingly, there were 3 ice ages that happened. The first ice age hit 400,000 BC. The second ice age hit 230,000 BC. And the third ice age hit 130,000 BC. So things did change environmentally, and they definitely had effect on whatever was going on, whether in the animal kingdom or the Anunnaki kingdom, let's call it, in those times. So I listed that in my timeline. Then humans leave Africa for Eurasia 90,000 years ago. Evidence of the first Cro-Magnons based on fossil and DNA evidence 74,000 years ago, which is very, very interesting because, humans and Neanderthals humans did not evolve from Neanderthals. It's more likely that humans evolved through an intervention from Cro-Magnons because of the timeline of when the Neanderthals lived and the structure of the skull and the shape of the jaw from fossils we've seen, and the Cro-Magnons who had a more favorable brain, similarly designed and developed like a human. And they were actually were the ones doing cave painting and showed great intelligence. And so from what I understand, humans evolved from Cro-Magnons versus
yeah. And the thing about it is that when you look at the human brain is actually smaller than it is with some of the previous ones. So were they more intelligent maybe than we are? I'm not so sure about that. I know. What is your thought?
The only data that I know is that, okay, so there were three major modifications, right? You had Homo habilis was 2.2 million to 1.6 million years ago. And the size of the brain was about 750 milliliters. Then you had Homo erectus. Homo erectus was 2 million years ago to 400,000 years ago. And the size of the brain of Homo erectus was about 900 milliliters. Then you had Homo sapiens, which were 200,000 years ago, obviously up until now. And our brain capacity is 1,400 milliliters. And the interesting part of that is if you do the math, it took, and this is part of the reason why Darwinism can't be true, is that if it took Homo habilis 1.2 million years to alter and mutate into Homo erectus, the brain enlargement was 16%. But Homo sapiens at 200,000 years ago, all of a sudden it jumped from 900 milliliters to 1,400 milliliters, an increase of 55%.
Mm-hmm.
And it happened overnight. So the argument goes against Darwinism, because if all things were kept equal, 16%, 1.2 million years, 55%, 50,000 years, something must have occurred. Something must have happened.
Oh, yeah. And my impression, though, from memory here is that the brain of the Neanderthal actually was bigger than ours.
Yes. Yes,
Yeah.
that's exactly right. 1,500 mLs. It was 1,500 mLs. So that's interesting too. Like, how did that get so big? Maybe that species was a test as well.
Could very well be.
It's a bipedal primate.
And which one of those that you mentioned do you think that the Anunnaki, because it says in the tablets that they took a creature that was already there and then altered their the two twisted ropes of life. Well, that sounds like the double helix to me.
Sure.
So was that maybe the Homo sapien, or which one do you think that was?
I think it was Cro-Magnon.
Cro-Magnon?
Yeah, because Cro-Magnon started 120,000 years ago, and they lived till 35,000 years ago. Whereas Neanderthals, which are not related to humans, lived also 120,000 years ago. But several authors have said that the Neanderthals could not, for some reason, I don't know why, could not mate with Cro-Magnons. And so Cro-Magnons and Neanderthals were separate species. And actually, humans lived alongside Cro-Magnons.
Yeah, they did.
Which I find so interesting. And that sort of lends credence to the cave paintings and, some of the fossil evidence of arrow tips and spears and agricultural tools.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah. And so, super interesting, the evolution and how sort of the Homo sapien fits into the timeline and how we got so smart so quick. I find that to be the most interesting is we just got, even today, you can see how technology is developing so rapidly that, we went from a wheel to space in how long? Not that long.
Yeah.
And so I think we're a very interesting species. And I think, we've garnered a lot of interest with extraterrestrials and other species out there, not only for exploding hydrogen bombs and our nuclear capacity, but also in the fact that we're technologically increasing so rapidly.
Absolutely. And look at aviation. In 1903, well, at least that's what we're told, the first airplane left and flew for something like 45 seconds. 63 years later, we were walking on the moon.
That's incredible.
That's amazing.
It's amazing. It really is amazing in the span of one man's lifetime, pretty much.
Can you imagine how far we are along now that we are not being told of?
No, first of all, I love what you do. I love the fact that you do it. And I love what you say because you're not afraid to say it. And the fact is that what you're saying is correct. I mean, it's sort of like we're adults now, you and I, but we're sort of like kindergartners when it comes to information along the highway, because it's not been given to us. We've been spoon-fed, Gerber's applesauce when we should be eating, steak. Really good meat.
Oh gosh. Well, you got more on that history there. Let's hear it.
Okay, so almost through here. So Anunnaki supposedly leave Earth initially 75,000 BC. Then there was, which I find very interesting, a planetary pole shift at 50,000 BC. Right? So something happened. And we see cave paintings, 35,000 BC. Then Anunnaki are back. They intervene back 31,000 BC. And then I show, and I'd like your information on this, but your feedback on this, but the flood, the major flood, the Noah's Ark flood, 11,500 BC.
Exactly the number I have too.
Is that what you have too? Okay.
Yep.
So, and that if that's true, that means that the pyramids, which have erosion, I'm sure have erosion at the base, have to be at least 11,500 BC.
Yep.
Probably earlier.
Yep. The Sphinx also.
The Sphinx also.
Yep.
Which I would love to see what's underneath that, Crazy. Yeah. Okay. Earliest known writing, 5,000 BC. And then it moves very quickly. First Egyptian pharaoh, 3.1 thousand BC. Anunnaki leave Earth, 2.5 thousand BC. And then it seems like they're gone. Sumerian clay tablets, very important, written 2.4 thousand BC. Abraham, born 2000 BC. Moses, 1.3 thousand BC. The Old Testament, written 500,000 BC. I'm sorry.
5,000.
5,000. 5,000. And then Jesus. And there's a lot in between, but that's sort of my timeline.
Yeah. What did you find his actual name was? Did you ever look into that?
Jesus's?
Yeah.
No.
Mm-hmm. Well, the letter J, was invented right around about 1480 or 1500 by the Pope. Before that, they didn't even have the letter J, so it couldn't be Jesus. But from the old surviving records, they talk about the Roman records, they talk about this Messiah, which means Messiah, and that was Yahshua Beth Halakmeh. That was supposed to have been, Halakmeh was his father's, Joseph's name. So it's, when religion gets involved with something, it usually gets screwed up. So that makes sense.
I agree with that. I'm with you there. So that's the timeline. And then we could sort of go to any subject you like from here.
Well, the alien intervention. I'm really interested in knowing maybe a little more about that.
So, okay. So if the Anunnaki record is true and valid, they came to Earth searching for gold. They needed humans to mine the gold, which I think Tellinger talks about. Michael Tellinger talks about caves, obviously in the southern Africa, and it's so interesting that these caves have human remains in them. They're 80 feet to 100 feet deep, and 100, 200,000 years old.
Yep.
So I guess my question is, why on earth would a human, I'd say it's 150,000 BC, Why would a human be 80 feet down in a cave digging for gold? I mean, that's not at the top of his mind, his or her mind. You know, they're thinking about safety. They're thinking about eating. They're thinking about reproduction. They're not thinking about carving gold, you know?
Yeah.
So if that's true, and the Anunnaki created the humans, and the first ones were messy and he didn't get it right. And then finally, after 100,000 years, he got it right. And he created the Adamu. And then they started to do his dirty work and dig his gold and become human. Yeah. Then all of the Sumerian tablets that you see in Egypt and Iraq, etc., all of the tablets that show the Anunnaki, which were, from what I've read, anywhere between 10 and 15 feet in height, show the large Anunnaki being, bearded, muscular,
yep,
Herculean. And then you see the human next to that Anunnaki being that's 50% or less in height, scrawnier, less muscular, at his feet, basically at his knees, doing whatever the Anunnaki want them to do. There's a lot of also depictions, very interesting depictions that I would look at the Sumerian tablets with the Anunnaki holding a pine cone in one hand. How interesting is that? Why a pine cone, right? If these beings, and has a watch, right? A watch.
They have a watch, yes.
You know, it's got to be an Apple Watch. It's got to be something that's either a weapon,
I know.
Right?
There's technology in that one, but I counted it, and there is 18 hours on it.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, there's 18 spikes from the middle. So on the one that I saw, so that must be their calendar, maybe not ours.
Right.
I'm blank on that one.
Well, you know what's interesting, Augie? You said 18. First of all, I'd never heard that before. And second of all, you said 18. 18, 6 multiplies into 18. Their system, their multiplication system, their mathematics was sexagesimal. Everything divisible by 6.
Yes.
That's why we have 12 hours, 24 hours, 60 minutes, 60 seconds. Pretty much everything is divisible by 6, not 3, not 5. So, yeah, I think 18 probably makes sense because, you know, divisible by 6. 6 is divisible into 18.
Well, that's a thought. But they were different species than us, because in the tablets they also talk that their days were longer than ours from, you know, their home world, that, you know, that planet passing around the brown star, because they slept for 7 days and they worked for 7 days, have I read in the tablets. So their day was totally different than ours. So they were a different species, I would think.
Yeah.
So they look human, but they were a different species.
Yeah. You know, what's interesting is the diagrams that I've seen on the Sumerian tablets do depict, from what I can see, 5 fingers and 5 toes. But then a lot of the archaeological books, anthropological books, paleontological books that I've read about humans found, even in the United States, some of these humans have 6 fingers and 6 toes. And I just wonder about that sometimes. You know, were they Anunnaki? Were they Nephilim? I don't know.
There is in some of the Mideastern countries, it's not uncommon that kids are born with 6 fingers. It happens. So maybe they're a little closer to the genetics than possibly we are. I don't know. In Afghanistan, there is a I read that in a military journal, actually. That was said that pretty much the whole town, small town, had 6 fingers. So it does happen.
Yeah. I initially thought it was Anunnaki, from Anunnaki. And then also I read, I'm sure you've heard about the Mona Lisa on the moon. Doesn't she has six fingers also?
Yeah.
So I just trying to tie those sequences together and figure out, did that originally, if the Anunnaki were originally from Orion, which it sounds like they were at sort of an escape element from Orion. So sort of went from Orion to, I think, Sirius, and Sirius to Nibiru. If they were originally from Orion, and if the pyramids were basically based on the belt of Orion, the three pyramids based on Orion, and saying to us humans now, hey, we originated from Orion. The pyramids don't point to Nibiru, they point to Orion. So, does that mean that Orion was the real origination of humanoids, not Nibiru? Nibiru was sort of, the outcast or the offshoot.
Yep. I kind of think maybe that could be something to that. Because they are, on the planet of the crossing, it's not necessarily a comfortable place by the time they get way out into space and come back in again. It's cold out there. And of course, as I understand it, they don't live on the surface, but they live inside the planet. So it may be okay that way.
Yeah, something about heating the planet from the insides. There's something in the core, some iron core, maybe similar to Earth's, but hotter, keeping them warm. Like you said, it's cold out there. And, flipping into elliptically our orbit every 3,600 years, coming in between Mars and Jupiter, like Sitchin said, and causing, tumultuous planetary event.
And there's all kinds of theories about when they're coming back in. And I ran the numbers, and I find these are my numbers, and I don't know, I'm not an expert, but I found that's going to be another 400 years before they show up. But
it's so funny that you said that. My numbers showed 2,900. I don't know why.
Oh, okay.
Could be yours is correct.
I don't know. I'm open to anything in that area, but not right now.
No, thank God.
This time is off that schedule, but somebody that think they are somebody, they say it's coming in right now. So I don't know.
I hope not, because from what I understand from them, and while Enki really is our hero, right? Our hero, because he loved the humans and he protected the humans, and if he is in fact, the progenitor of like all of the Central and South American tribes, the Incas and the Mayans, and if this was their god, and he taught language and all of these, and even biology to these groups of South Americans. I mean, then he really was he was the George Washington of the Americas.
And when you talked about this flood, there is every society around the globe talks about a flood.
Mm-hmm.
South Americans do, India does, there's in China, they talk about it. Even way far inland, they talk about a flood. So, yeah, it happened. Besides, they found the Noah's Ark. It's sitting right at the base of Mount Ararat.
It is that. Is that true?
Yeah.
It is true.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's just incredible. That's just amazing. What do you think about the animals on the ark? Do you believe in that?
Well, there's a joke hidden in there somewhere. And when you ask somebody, do you believe in ravens? And if the guy said, yeah, I see them. And I said, well, how come they're here? Because Noah, when he first sent out a raven, the raven didn't come back. That means he only had one raven left. That does not save a species. So.
That's pretty funny. I never heard that before.
Yeah. But I think there were more like, it could be that there were genetic samples of all what they knew about on the ark.
That's exactly what I believe. I believe it was, genetic samples, and they
because
reproduced.
let's face it, people living in that part of the world, they're not going to take and put penguins on there.
No.
They won't. Not all the animals could fit on that thing.
Do you think the flood was a regional event? And by regional, I mean Middle East.
Yeah. In that particular flood, I think so. But if it is like it says in the Sumerian tablets that there was a big sheet that fell off the ice on the South Pole into the water when it just calved, and then it sunk down in the water, created a huge tsunami that was several hundred feet or 1,000 or a couple of thousand feet tall, that will wipe out everything, And that will go one place and another direction. It will travel around the world.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Makes sense. It does.
Yeah, so I am 104% sure it did happen.
Mm-hmm.
But how? It probably was the ice shelf that fell off in the south. I mean, Antarctica.
Do you think Enlil had anything to do with that slip? Very
likely.
Remember, he said, "I want all the humans out. I want them dead." So I find it interesting, and if they were able to look, if they knew the distances between the center of the earth and the pyramid, and that same distance is the pyramid to the North Pole, and they knew the structure of the earth and the axis and the solstices, then, what's to stop them from using some sort of I don't know.
Oh, they have technology that could do that.
Right? To shift the planet.
Yeah. We don't know what they could do because they were so far ahead back then. And I'm sure they have progressed since then also.
Yeah. Yeah. Scary. So yes, back to your question. I don't want them around.
Now you talk about the missing link. Let's visit that a little bit because that gets interesting also. We talked a little bit about that, but why are we still looking for it when there is so much evidence that you're talking about?
Yeah, the funny thing is, Darwin, you think about Darwin, who by the way was not a professor of biology. He wasn't a medical doctor. 1859, he writes Origin of the Species. Look, he did a lot of research. He had foot in the ground and traveled and did his homework. He was the first, quote unquote, human evolutionary biologist.
Yeah.
He, tried to suggest and prove that humans were a direct result of primate mutation, primate adaptation, primate evolution through natural selection. The problem is that, again, back to what I said before about the brain size, where it took 1.2 million years versus 50,000 years. The problem is that if there was this slow mutation, slow adaptation, you would have to have these intermediary fossils found. So say you're going from human number 1 and you're getting to human number 50, right, who's further developed down the line, you would need to see humans 1 through 50 in succession, fossil evidence showing that mutation, adaptation through natural selection. The problem is that there are no fossils that show that transmutation, and because of that, the term "the missing link" became.
Yeah.
So my third book is called "The Missing Link," and it was sort of my third and final.
Yes.
Of course, you got that big gold DNA helix right in the middle with binary right in the middle.
While we are on that, would you give them your website and also where they can find that book? If we just get that out now, and then also at the end of the show, I think it's good.
Sure. If you go to Facebook, my website is the Adam Series, ADAM series. And you'll see my videos and everything on there. So that's my website. And then you can buy my books on Amazon, pretty much exclusive with Amazon. I've got 3 books. Adam Equals Alien was my first. Adam Decoded, which is an interesting, very interesting puzzle, I guess you'd say, that takes you through Sumerian tablets and actually teaches you Sumerian and allows you to use some of the Sumerian letters to figure out the thesis of the book. And then the third book.
Learn the language?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, the alphabet. I sort of use the alphabet, equating it to English letters. But you'll look at this sign and that equals an A, and then you'll look at that sign and equals a B. And anyway, I have this puzzle and secret at the end. And I'm sure you could figure out my thesis secret at the end of it. And then my third book is called The Missing Link, which sort of goes after DNA, and it's more science. Talks about chromosomes, and specifically gets into the genes that there's 223 genes in the human genome that have no predecessor, sort of came from nowhere. Out of 30,000 genes. So of these 223 genes, I focus into 5 genes. And these genes have to do with speech, cranial development, jaw, and then other mechanisms involving neurology, and only human type mechanisms. So people don't, but microbiologists today, and even human evolutionary biologists today, have no idea where these 223 genes, FOXP2 is one of them, that is involved in speech. So it sort of makes sense that of these 223 genes, FOXP2, having to do with our ability to speak, came about. Primates can't speak, obviously. Humans can speak. So this gene, imagine some scientist like Enki fuse together a Cro-Magnon female ovum and a male Anunnaki sperm, but in the process of fusing them together, made sure that these elements of genetics, like speech, like intelligence, like cranial development, like jaw development, some of these points were developed, and trying to make sure that humans had those abilities versus Cro-Magnons who didn't. Mm-hmm. So these 223 genes, I focus into it, and I delve into what the gene looks like and my ideas on how telomeres, basically, which is the tail end of the gene, could have been cut and fused together, which equals what's called a chromosome 2, from a primate, snipped and then fused with these 223 genes to create a human.
Yeah. Well, they knew how. Because it did happen.
It did happen. I mean, we have test tube babies today. So right, we know how to make test tube babies. And like you said, 64 years to fly to the moon. I mean, we know how to create test tube babies now in 50, 60, 70 years. Yeah. So I get into a lot of science about chromosomes. I talk about introns. I talk about introns. I talk about telomeres, telomerase, and different elements of genes and their relation to creating a protein. But I specifically focus on 223 genes that have no predecessor. And that to me is that's it. That's the missing link.
Yeah. And then we have this thing called junk DNA. It's not junk, is it?
No, it's not. It's not junk at all. I think that's it. I mean, I think that junk is it. That's, and it's so funny. I'm sure you would agree. It's so funny.
Jesus,
that
but
scientists call
means
it junk.
Messiah, and now they couldn't explain it, so they have to call it junk.
Right, which it's not junk. It's, you know, it happens. It's probably, if from what I'm reading is true, takes us to another spatial dimension, takes us from a third dimension being to a fourth, and then maybe even to a fifth, and allows us to do things, in my opinion, like ESP, remote viewing, a lot of the things that, I mean, I think I have a little bit of ESP. I don't have a lot of it. I know a lot of people that have a lot of it, but I think people's ability, even in like autism or even non-autism, ability to tap into, and this is not my expertise, but just my suggestion, tap into these spatial intelligences and connections. I think junk DNA is sort of opens the door to, you know, to this whole other spatial world. And I would love to delve into it.
Absolutely, because I believe it was at UCLA, they did some genetic investigation of these so-called, there were these, what do we call them, the gifted children. And some of them show that the junk DNA started to resemble or assemble itself. And it started to wrap around to create a third strand.
Interesting.
So they say that these kids that was very gifted, they had many of them, or actually not many, but I think they did a few, and there were several of them that found that this had happened. They started to create another strand outside or inside or with the double helix. So if that was starting to do such, it goes back to something I read in the London Museum from a transcript from a Sumerian tablet, where one of the things that was taken out, the Anunnaki removed from actually it started with Lulu, which is supposed before Adam. They took away long life and the ability to know what is in the other's mind. So they took away psychic abilities or immortality, possibly. Even though the Anunnakis were not immortal, but they lived very long.
Right. Isn't it interesting also, Age, that the human lifespan is 120, another multiple of 6. There are so many, you know, I kept coming into such, you know, synchronicity with the number 6 that, you know, I don't know. It also, you know, I was thinking about it in geometry. There's a lot of elements of the number 6 in geometry. This, you know, spatially the size of a diamond, and pyramidal form. You know, the pyramids to me is just incredible. I think it's the foundation of everything. It's even inside of DNA, there are pyramid nanospheres. So if that's true, then the pyramid is it. You know, the pyramid is the founding, the building block of everything.
Yeah, the Cheops, yes.
Right. And, you know, not only did our gods build pyramids to codify that geometry and that intelligence and sort of, you know, pass down. And again, we talked about the Sphinx, you know, I would love to know what's under the feet of the Sphinx. But if in fact the gods knew that you know, a pyramid, you know, was the building block of everything, isn't it interesting that they would create such large 500 foot, you know, structures, you know, out of 2.1 million tons of stone from 600 miles away, you know, go through such measures to create these magnificent, you know, monoliths that just happen to be in the center of the landmass of the earth. Just happened to be.
Yeah.
Exactly the spot of the landmass of the earth, you know. and in the shape of the belt of Orion. They're off a little bit. They're not symmetrical. There's one, then two, and then one's off a little bit. I was at a one of the alien cons in Minneapolis, and I met one of the writers of the Orion mystery, and he's an Egyptologist. He's from Egypt, and I had the breakfast with him, and he was talking about the fact that he did a sort of a computer timeline of Leo specifically. Why Leo? I don't know. He was trying to focus on the Sphinx and why the Sphinx is a lion. So he was focused on Leo and where Leo would be above the horizon, above Giza. And he did this simulation. Did you see this?
No.
He did a simulation, and in fact, it's so interesting. Leo was right above the Sphinx, 10,500 BC. Exact. 10,500, which is so interesting. And if that's true, then maybe the pyramids were built 10,500 BC. So he just wanted to see when the belt of Orion was literally right above that spot.
Yeah, that could very well be. I know that in the distant past there were green pastures all the way around, all the way through the Sahara Desert and all the way up to the Mediterranean. So, and then there were rain, but I think that was probably a little more further back than 10,005. But then I'm not so sure how that timeline for the rain to create erosion on the Sphinx, because that is, everybody can see it.
Yes. Absolutely. At the base,
Yeah. And it'd take probably at least a few thousand years to create that much erosion, as well as there were no rain in Egypt 5,000 years ago. So that's a lead balloon.
I would agree with you.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I've read also that it's very possible that Egypt wasn't always a desert, that it may have been snow. There may have been snow at one point. You had the 3 ice ages. So maybe there was snow there and then became, desert, through the planetary and pole shifts. So, who knows environmentally, ecologically, how it could have been.
When we're talking about an alien connection here somewhere, looking back at history, we know they've been there. We know we've interacted with them. We have had them here for a long time, and they're still here, probably walking down the street with us. We'll never know it because some of them look like us. But who do you think is on the top of the food chain today? It's not a politician. I think they get their orders from somewhere. Who's at the top of the food chain? Are we still under somewhat of the influence of the Anunnaki, or is it someone else?
I don't know the answer. I will tell you, though, if it is a pyramid, you and I are at the bottom.
Yeah.
And the politicians are sort of somewhere in the middle, maybe even worse. And the power of the president is, as in the words of several authors, absolutely zero. I believe in the Bilderberg, trilaterals, Council on Foreign Relations. I believe it's those 3 groups and the Jason Society as well.
That too.
And these elements, these 30 families, the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, etc., are running the world and have been for a couple hundred years, and want their industries, whether it's financial, transportation, oil and gas, any of their industries, protected. I think that's why people like Tesla lost his life.
Yeah.
Which is
Like,
such a shame.
I always wondered, it appears as they are the ones that is pulling the strings here, but is there anybody that maybe are giving them orders to do something?
I've read that, yes. I've read that if you believe in the Galactic Federation,
Yeah.
and if you believe that just like in human society, there are good aliens and bad aliens,
Yeah.
and that in this Galactic Federation, that there are human-looking aliens. Of course, there are gray-looking aliens, insectoid, reptoid, different types of forms of humans. Then I do believe that there is a group. Maybe it is the Orions, and maybe Anunnaki sit on that council. Maybe it's both. But yes, I believe that these Bilderbergs, Trilaterals, Council on Foreign Relations, Jason Society, these are the overlords of us, but that they're still slaves to extraterrestrials.
That's kind of what I'm thinking, that they are actually obedient to someone also.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe the ultimate order comes from off the planet. And if you look what's happening right now, especially with this latest calamity that is going around, it almost seems like somebody is trying to terraform Earth for a species that doesn't need oxygen or the resources that we have.
That's interesting. I haven't heard that.
Yeah, they're trying to destroy the place. So is the concept of profit that important that they will actually destroy the earth in order to make the last amount of profit they can squeeze out of it? I don't think so.
No, I don't think so either. I don't think so either. I'm not sure you bring up a very interesting point. I'm not sure what the vested interest is. Initially I thought it was raw materials, right? Like gold, and on the moon, titanium, and other materials and minerals. And also the earth has water, and there's I'm sure a lot going on within water, and you could use water in a lot of different ways, but I'm not so sure it's money.
Yeah, I think there's more.
There's more. There's gotta be more.
Gotta be more.
And you know what else is interesting, Augie? I talk about in my books about, in the Bible, in the Old Testament, it sort of refers to the tree of life, the tree of knowledge, tree. Everything's a tree. I think the tree represents DNA. And even Hebrew letters, some like Aleph in Hebrew looks like the strands of DNA. I think that we humans are, and we've been referred to this in NSA documents by gray extraterrestrials. We humans are called containers.
Oh, yeah.
Did you read about this?
I haven't read it, but I heard somebody say that. Yeah.
So apparently, I don't think it was the Roswell gray, but another gray in 53 or 61, another gray alien referred to humans as containers. And when asked what were containers of, we didn't get a straight answer from the gray extraterrestrial. And so my thinking in my book, The Missing Link, my thinking is that humans are containers of souls. So we have a soul.
Yeah.
They don't. They want that.
Yeah.
So I think we're containers of souls. Whatever a soul is, I don't know really. But I think that that's what separates us humans from, say, gray aliens.
Yeah. I think you're right. And I see now we got 5 minutes left. Talk a little bit about your 3 books and also how they can get a hold of you again. Mention,
Sure. So my first book, and this is actually out of print right now, but my first book is called Adam Equals Alien. There's a picture of, these are actually 2 Russian models on the cover, and I wanted them to look as, clay-like as possible. That was my first edition of Adam Equals Alien. It's now I'm using this cover now for Adam Equals Alien as well. So the second edition of Adam Equals Alien looks like this, but then the second book is called Adam Decoded. For those of you that like puzzles, you will love this book because it reads like a puzzle. So that's Adam Decoded.
That Sumerian symbol on the front there, what does that mean?
Yes, that's an A.
A, okay.
So you'll get to learn it. There's Sumerian symbols in almost every page. But you'll see, for example, here's a page where it says the Sumerians, and that's an S. So you'll figure out that's an A, the other one's an S, and then you'll be able to solve at the end my puzzle. And the puzzle is sort of, what I believe and where I believe man evolved from. And that's the code right there. I don't know if you can see it.
Yeah, I see.
At the bottom. And if you could figure out what that code is, that's my thesis of the book. Mm-hmm. And then my third and final, The Missing Link, my new one. For those of you that like science, biology, you will love this one. It gets right down to business. And then I'm working on time travel next.
Really?
I love the Philadelphia experiment. I'm obsessed with the Philadelphia experiment. And if it's true, and I believe it is true, geez, that opens up a whole world for me.
We should talk more about that.
Oh, I would love to. Do you know a lot about that?
I've studied it for 25 years.
Oh my gosh, I want to talk about this.
Yeah. There is in 2003, BBC television came over to the US to do a TV documentary on time travel. And they interviewed Michio Kaku and Green and myself. And I demonstrated a small electronic device that I've had some very strange experiences with. So we should talk a little bit.
Oh my Lord. I love it. Absolutely. I can't wait. I'm very excited about it.
Yeah. All right. Well, what is next for you beyond? The time travel is going to be another book?
Yeah. My next book is going to be called Time Stands Still. And basically it's, I'm gonna look into the Philadelphia experiment. I'm going to look into, all of the, characters that exist behind the scenes, which I'm sure you know a ton about. I want to look into wormholes, Einstein-Rosen bridge. And I want to learn and study elements of stargates. If they exist, where are they? How do they work? And I just want to delve into how much the U.S. has known since 1943 and understand that if, in fact, that ship vanished and then reappeared and Duncan Cameron and his brother jumped off the ship and ended up in Montauk 40 years later, meeting the same German scientist behind the experiment. You've got me. You got me because I know. I'm captive.
Yeah, but there were a lot of witnesses to that disappearance at the time. So that thing really did happen.
Oh, I would love to speak to you about it. I can't wait.
Yeah. All right. Well, we are at the top of the hour again. So could we talk you into coming back sometime?
Of course. This has been great.
I really enjoyed it. This was good.
I would love to. Thank you so much.
Yeah. And I assure for you, those of you that now are with us, we have been talking to Leon Bibi, and we've been talking about all the stuff that you're not supposed to know about. So next week, we'll be back again, and we will talk to you soon. Good night.